hereby call on November 25th, 2024, a meeting of the Town of Hanson Planning Board to order at 6:30 PM. I would also like to announce for all those in attendance that this meeting is being recorded for distribution on Woodman-Hanson Community Access. Playback times and other related information on this recording can be found at WHCA-TV. With that call to order, we are here at 542 Liberty Street in the Select Board's meeting room on the first floor. If there are any persons that are going to be in attendance, we want to make sure that they please sign in for our sign-in sheet. First item of business on our call to order is the approval of the September 23rd and October 28th, 2024 open session public meeting minutes.
So moved.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Kemet, seconded by Mr. Bedonato in regards, I'm going to take these in successive order. In regards to September 23rd, any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor for September 23rd signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 4-0. And I'm going to go into the same approval. Mr. Kemet, is that all right? Motion made by Mr. Kemet, seconded by Mr. Bedonato for the approval of the October 28th, 2024 open session public meeting minutes. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? An abstention. You have one abstention, that would be me, 301. I was not at that meeting.
Did you read the minutes?
I read the minutes, but I had.
Be 302.
Say again?
302.
302, because Mr. Cohen is not in attendance tonight. We should have announced that during the call to order. Mr. Cohen is not going to be in attendance at tonight's meeting. We have a few minutes, if you don't mind reviewing in your packet. We don't have any further information.
I can provide some information
And we
on
have a minute to go before we go through our 6:35 public hearing. Was the public hearing from last meeting, it wasn't closed, it was
Continued,
forwarded. Yeah, continued.
yes.
Great, thanks. Make sure you use the right language.
And you live in the dream.
What is it?
Are you living the dream?
Living the dream? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The time having arrived at 6:35 PM, I'm going to continue the open public hearing for the High Street Park, which is the working title submitted by High Street Park Committee for land located on the High Street, map 49, lot 1 and 1A-1. Public hearing to be continued to all the way through until, expected tentative to be continued all the way through till January 13th, 2025. With that, I'm going to hand the meeting over to the town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what has been done at this point is the revisions that were, the comments that were made by the peer reviewer, I have forwarded those comments to land planning and have asked them to provide an estimate and a time to get those comments and address those issues. And I did receive response from land planning. They were going to get back to me. I sent another email today. I had sent an email to the company, to a specific contact at the company. I didn't hear anything back. So I sent a second email to that individual plus his boss, and then I received a email response. So I was told that, they're going to get back, but I'm staying on top of that. So with that being said, and we're heading into the holiday season, I think it probably would be best to just continue it to our first meeting in 2025, which would be January the 13th, if the board so wishes.
Any questions or comments from the board? As this is a public hearing, are there any questions or comments from the public in attendance at tonight's meeting? Seeing none, it's been requested to have action from the board to continue until January 13th, 2025. What's the will of the board?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mr. Bedonato.
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Bedonato, seconded by Mr. Ellis to continue the High Street Park discussion and public hearing until January 13th, 2025. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 401, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no appointments this evening, so to the next portion of our agenda for 6:40-ish, we have some board subcommittee updates.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just for the record,
Tom Clare.
just for the members of the board to know that we have a copy, 12th edition of Robert's Rules, that'll be in the office. And I'll be bringing this to the meeting. So if anyone has any questions or, uncertainties, this will be available.
How many pages in that thing?
Great reading.
A lot. And it is really good reading, believe it or not. I've thumbed through and looked for certain things that I wanted my own clarifications on, so it was good.
When was it updated?
This is the 12th edition, which was,
Yeah, I think they do one every year. I think they do one, because I have a copy of the 10th, and it's not that old.
this says printing 2024, July of 2024?
Should be. Just things change so quick in the court system.
They can, yeah. And we'll wait for that 6:40 moment. I would like to recognize and thank Mr. Heel, a representative from the Select Board.
Yes, I did, because we had a few different things I was interested in. I was hoping we were gonna have the public hearing was my main one, but that's good to, it's fine.
Yeah. We'll get some peer review going on with that.
Add to
change
contacts.
The last, the public hearing. was
Change
last year.
contacts?
Yeah, like we did with the others.
See, that it's now 6:40. I'm going to go this from bottom to top. Mr. Bonanno, do you have anything from drainage and stormwater?
Well, actually, myself and Ed Hill were discussing it earlier, and we don't know if we're gonna have to recreate it, because there's been no action, no communication. So that's where we're at. We can see that we're gonna have to recreate it, reestablish it, and do something with the stormwater and drainage committee.
It's interesting because before Paul reached out to me, I actually reached out to Laura saying, we gotta do something to give it doesn't have any teeth, there's no.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time on conservation and trying to do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? The impediment seems to be the highway surveyor, who's a busy guy,
And we've been
and
through
he's
a few
actually the
highway
chairman of it.
surveys.
So I wonder if maybe it could be reconfigured to eliminate him from the process, so that, and then just have him show up on the advisory thing. That way, at least he can hold meetings.
In the past, recently, I'm not sure how long ago, but it used to have a budget, and the budget has since gone over to the highway department, so that the committee no longer has a budget. Basically, the MS4 stuff that it does has been done by the highway department, as far as I know. And I think you have something further down on the agenda about storm,
We do.
maybe I'm missing something,
No,
storm
you're right, we do.
management and earth removal applications. Is that at all related? Stormwater management.
Yes. So when we get to that, yes.
So it seems like either we need to get together and discuss what it should be, or if it shouldn't be. But right now, it's just kind of more fumbling than anything else.
Do you want to carry that to the Select Board Chair
Yes.
further, or do you want me to?
Yes, I'll do that, yeah, but I'm not sure who would be interested in communicating what it should be. I don't really know what the mandate should be. Should that be a Paul or or you, or?
Well, if I could just throw out there, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, the town planner.
So, my understanding of, in the past, of the drainage committee was if there was some issues in town
Yeah.
that required drainage, the committee would make recommendations to the highway. Now, I may not have the full story, but that's sort of paraphrased. Now, obviously, as the board's aware, we have a lot of, you have, within the subdivision control law, within the stormwater management guidelines, so there's a lot of laws, regulations, and all that. So if there's gonna be a drainage committee, then the drainage committee to some degree has to sort of understand those regulations and what it takes, you know? Because if you don't, then you might make a recommendation, say, hey, we'd like to do this, and it's like, well, you can't, because the stormwater regs wouldn't allow it, or MS4 wouldn't allow it.
Right.
So if there's going to be a committee, then I think there needs to be some sort of, let's say, education of these regulations, so, and standards of today's standards to understand what's going on, you know? Unless the committee's gonna be like, well, we've received, complaints of drainage.
Yeah.
But I suppose the highway, that's their job already. If there's drainage issues, then they should be the ones receiving the complaint. So, I don't, you know, what could the committee do? You know, look,
Right now, we need to complain about,
drainage
detention
and detention, right, and
That's basically.
I think if the committee is gonna do something, you really have to try and focus on, from an outsider's perspective, the highway department, as we've said many times, is understaffed. And just to address the existing drainage and detention basins and retention basins, just for maintenance, Hanson could use, or would use, at least 2 guys going year-round,
Yeah,
just
full-time.
full-time, just for maintaining. And then when I say maintaining, I'm talking about mowing, removing of vegetation, clearing out pipes. That doesn't count if they come across a detention basin that isn't functioning properly.
That's failed, yeah.
Because the berm of the forebay is not functioning properly, or the pipe is collapsed, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you have to add that factor. So I think, you know, that becomes a big thing right there, is, you know, getting to that maintenance.
Mr. Kevin?
Couldn't we also address, like, there's a lot of detention basins and things like that on private property, because there was past practice of, somebody's stormwater detention pond to be on private property. And if that person doesn't allow people there could be hearings related to that. And it could also work toward getting those put into easement, situation with the town, so that, it would be easier. Those are all things that committee could work on.
Yeah, I mean, I put together a list for the previous highway superintendent, because he had passed along to me the MS4 report, an MS4 report prepared by Venmo Partners.
Yeah.
So I took a look at all these detention basins, and which ones were in a subdivision, which ones were in an easement.
You did this, or he did?
I did this.
Okay.
You know, and I have a list, I have it upstairs, I pulled deeds, I pulled plans, and I comprised a list of which ones are in easements that are shown on subdivision plans, and then have to look at the lot that it's on to see if in that deed it actually talks about and refers to that drainage easement. Because if we have an easement that's been given to us, then we have access to that detention basin. But there are some that, as Mr. Kemet says, that are on private property that in essence we don't even have an easement to get to.
Yep.
And there's one in particular today, I won't go into the address, but just today, speaking with the highway superintendent, there was one that it's a pipe on someone's property that supposedly was put there in 1960 something. And he said, do you have any information on it? Because I don't. And I looked up, and I don't have any information on it. There isn't anything in the planning board file, so this is probably a handshake. Hey, we have an issue way back in the 60s. The highway department went out, tried to alleviate the situation, and now the current owner is saying, hey, because of age, it needs work. You know, we don't even have an easement to go out there and do the work.
And thus,
You know?
we need to recreate the committee.
Yeah.
You know?
With someone who's willing to be active, right?
And so, I mean, there is, like Mr. Kemet says, I think there's something to tackle and say, where do we have easements
Mhm.
and where do we not? and let's focus on trying to get those easements from folks,
Yep.
you know?
So we just need to discuss it as a group and reformulate it. It's funny, because if you look on the website, Paul and I are supposed to be on that committee, and we're not listed on as members. I know I am. Paul is a gray area, but I've been to every meeting in the past.
Well, he was appointed by. That's not great. There's no gray area there. He was.
No, he's joking.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. What do you mean, no gray area?
For him, you know, Paul was appointed by us to be on that committee, so.
But he's not on the,
The
even on the
webpage.
website. If you looked up drainage committee.
So that's the whole thing is, I mean, it's a good idea, but you need to also have the ability to understand that we're not doing drainage like they did in 1969.
Right.
Right.
That's gone. I mean, with the regulations that are there today,
Mhm.
it's completely different story,
Right.
you know?
And I guess the idea is, there's two different ways you go. You either go with the committee, or you take that highway, do all the work, and dispose the committee. But I'm not sure what the,
Well, isn't there changes coming in 2025 for stormwater management anyway?
Yeah, there's some,
compliance
yeah, some new,
changes.
right.
Yeah.
Just the town itself did its inventory to comply with MS4, and there's some things that are gonna need, some areas that need to be addressed. One happens to be the town hall, in particular the lower level here, because there is drainage in this parking lot, and there is drainage in the upper parking lot. But I'll just take this lower parking lot, because when I looked into it, and I went out there with a plan that showed where the drainage was, and I went and took a look. So for instance, in the lower parking lot, everything funnels to a low spot, which is his catch basin. The catch basin empties into what's known as a grit chamber. So that separates sediment, oil, gas.
yeah,
And then there's a pipe going out of that chamber going right into the pond. But if you stand and look at the pond level, and you stand and look at that grit chamber, I would find it very difficult to believe that that pond is not, in essence, backflowing into that grit chamber.
Going upstairs, uphill, yeah.
It's flowing into that grit chamber and pulling the stuff that's in that grit chamber right into the pond, you know? And then you have in the upper side, there's also a drainage area, and that one was modified there's an additional catch basin that wasn't shown in the design. And I'm not really, you know, I took a look at it, I didn't get a chance to like flip covers and open them up. I was able to look inside and see where the pipes were kind of going. So there's some work there, because if we have to comply, which we do, like the lower parking lot, there's gonna need some drainage upgrades, and as you can tell, it's limited to what we can do as far as
In-house, yeah.
in-house and
Budget.
where, you know, where do you put this drainage? You know, you have to, if you're gonna have a grit chamber, it has to flow out to something, and then we have to, you know, if you're looking at infiltration, well, there's the separation to the water table could become a problem, you know, so.
And one other quick thing, I think with stormwater management, I think there's a lot of confusion amongst different boards and committees, like, you know, conservation's in charge of, if it's within their jurisdiction. The Board of Health has a part in it, and so do we. But nobody seems to know what their real role is.
Right.
So, I mean, if you had a drainage committee that could look into what those roles are and what's required of it, that would be a kind of a good thing, I think. Saying.
Mr. Ellis?
Right across the street on the mill, the catch basin that goes right over by that crosswalk, directly empties right into the brook.
Yeah, so I mean, there's things that Hanson as a town, because as these regulations have come forward, has to comply with drainage. You see it, you know, you've seen it over the last couple of years, like Commonwealth of Mass, any of the highway,
Right.
any of the highway projects, you see detention basins where, I mean, you never saw them before. It was a catch basin, there was a pipe, and it was shooting up, and that was it. Now, any projects they do, there's a detention basin, you're treating the stormwater, you know, so,
The McQuon project's a good example. That
Yeah, it's
road-
very good.
The
Yeah.
proposed roadway, there was all kinds of stormwater management structures.
right.
as part
Right,
of
the
that.
TIP project, yeah, exactly. So it's all part of, you know, so I think it's, you know, if you're gonna get people on a committee, it has to be some education, there has to be some understanding, and then, yeah, definitely a focus as to what you're gonna do, you know.
Definitely,
So
because there
that-
isn't that at all right now.
Yeah, so it has to be a working partnership versus, let's say, a committee that is going in one direction and everybody else is going in the other. Yeah,
Or just a committee, period.
Yeah.
Some of the areas that it dumps right on private property.
Good.
And the individual who lives there doesn't realize that,
Right.
you know, but that's what they did years ago. That's the same thing down at the Ocean Spray Building. The street drainage goes right through, under the tracks, right through the buildings, under the tracks, and dumps out into the swamp.
Straight,
Yeah.
without any,
All right, anything further on drainage and stormwater? Mr. Kemen, Community Preservation Committee.
Nothing really to report at this point.
Okay.
We have a lot of stuff to think about, but nothing has really been forwarded yet.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis, High Street Park.
Well, as Tony said, we're waiting for them to get back and hold another committee meeting to find out what the costs are gonna be. If that's the engineering, you need some money for that. It's been done. So he was gonna try and chase down some money.
Okay.
How much you got on you now? Not-
And then for myself on open space, it's very much the same as what's going on with the drainage. I don't know what's going on with the open space committee. I know that the open space plan's coming up, but I had one conversation with a member, former member. I'm not sure. I'll reach out to him again to find out what's going on, but I don't know if I don't know if they've convened.
The committee, as far as I know, hasn't convened. We're having a kickoff meeting. I'll have to look at my calendar, but we're having a kickoff meeting with the consultant who's going to actually do the update for the open space and recreation plan. So I notified the Conservation Commission, we've notified members of the open space committee. I thought, did I send you an email on
Yeah,
that?
Mr. Ellis and myself as a designee from planning, but I don't know if the other two members are still involved.
Yeah.
Mr. Clements. The last I spoke to Mr. Clements, he was saying that, well, we know that one member had passed, but I don't know if there's anybody else that's been appointed. And then the other person, I'm not sure if they're coming back, so gonna find out.
A mystery committee for a long
It
time.
has been a mystery committee. All right.
Yeah, I can get you that date, because I know it's a kickoff meeting.
You did send it to me.
I sent it to me, yeah.
Yeah, you did have it.
Yeah, they
I
went.
just don't know if the other, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, again, I've sort of, I don't know if you want to call it liaison, lead, whatever it is, I'm just trying to direct,
I'll
and
ask
yeah,
Mr. Clements and then maybe talk to the chair of the select board to put it out that we have seats
yeah.
available.
I got a question.
Mr. Ellis?
Going back to the catch basins and stuff like that.
No going back.
No? I take really humor in that, huh?
Yeah.
So, geez, now I forgot what I was talking about.
Catch basin.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry. Don't put the catch basins here.
I'll come back, yeah.
All right. All right, that's all for board business, for board member subcommittee updates. We do have a zoning application review. So there's an application, Richard Howland, for special permit filed under section VE1, section VE1F6, and section V3D. Applicant also seeks site plan approval under section V2G3, A through I, and a variance under section IXB2 to allow for construction of 3,000 square foot buildings, parking, utilities, and stormwater management system in addition to an existing 6,000 square foot building at 24 Commercial Way, map 59, lot 17 to 15, Hanson's assessor map. Property is in the commercial industrial zone and aquifer protection zone. So this, we don't weigh in on this, but if we had the opportunity, if we had any concerns, then certainly we could collectively put those forward through the town planner to the ZBA. So if there's any board members that have any questions or comments or concerns, or town planner, if you have any comments that you'd like to make, please do so.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mr. Kemen.
It seems to me that according to the bylaw, that when the ZBA does a variance, they're supposed to submit that to us in writing as to why they have issued the variance, which they never seem to do. Just wondering.
So it'd be post-mortem if they were to issue a variance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We issued a variance and this is why. you know, because they're supposed to let us know the reason why,
Yeah.
they issued a variance.
At a minimum, let the town planner's office know.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you'd like to, Mr. Chair, I can go through that application because there are site plans that went with it.
Yeah, please do, Tony.
Um,
The question and the concern that I would have, Tony, and you'd be able to answer this, I think you should be able to answer this. So if somebody's changing something that's already been proposed and built, and that being the commercial industrial area, somebody's changing that, if I'm not mistaken, when that area was first built out, aren't there not stipulations on how, just the same as a subdivision, regular subdivision, that if you go back and you change the original, isn't there cause for concern to be able to say now you've changed the whole entire subdivision of the commercial industrial way?
Well, I've reviewed this application and I've reviewed the site plans. I haven't completed it, but I did have some points that I'm gonna bring up in a letter to the zoning board. There's a couple of things that I saw here that, I think, you know, if you go through our zoning bylaw, there are some talks of things that relate to planning board, like if you're gonna do this, you're supposed to do like a preliminary preliminary, we'll call it a preliminary subdivision plan, for lack of a better term, is what's listed in the zoning bylaw. So there's some things here that, you know, some points and some, that I'm gonna bring up to the zoning board, basically as the planner, and just looking at it. For instance, one of the things that I saw was that, because this is in the zone 2, okay, it says well, let me start with what they're doing. So the first thing is they have an existing 6,000 square foot building. It's at the corner of Commercial Way and Industrial Boulevard. So there's a business here with some related parking and some related drainage.
And that's the blue building, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And so what they're proposing, so this is the existing building, 6,000 square feet with its septic system and parking area and loading. What they're proposing are two buildings, 30 by 100. Building A, Building B, with its own septic system. Drainage here and drainage here for the buildings and the additional parking. What they're calling for is that this is a recharge area. So, to read their description, stormwater will initially be introduced into a deep sump and hooded catch basin. Stormwater subsequently will flow into the proposed cascade water quality unit, which shall be capable of removing over 90% of the total suspended solids. Final treatment of the stormwater will be via the introduction into a spacious stone recharge area. Roof drainage shall be routed into the second water quality unit. So this is for one of the recharge areas, and this is the second, and it can be tough to see, but this is the storm treatment unit that they're talking about, and there's one, I believe, right here. And so what that does is anything from the parking lot goes into the catch basin, it goes into this unit, solids fall out, oil, gas separator, goes into the recharge area, and then if there's above a certain storm event, it's going to flow out there's an existing drainage ditch here. I'm not sure exactly what's happening with the existing catch basins. That's one of my comments as well, is what's happening with that right now. And so they're proposing a septic system here and a tank and some parking.
A new septic system, right? So that
For those buildings,
would be two on one side?
it would be two on one site.
Okay, thank you.
And so what they're calling for is multiple buildings on a lot in the common commercial industrial district, which is allowed by special permit by the ZBA. One of the things that they have for lot coverage is 36% is what they're proposing. Now, because it's in a zone 2, our bylaw specifically says in no case max coverage to exceed 30%. So that is, you can get to 30% if you do some drainage measures like they have here, okay, which they call artificial recharge system. So they've provided a artificial recharge system. So they can go up to 30% in a zone 2. But our bylaws, I mean, the language says, in no case, max coverage to exceed 30%.
Are
So
they adding that 36 to part of their variance list?
that is, so they're calling for 36% coverage. So that's, you know, one of the things I'm pointing out.
Good question. What does DEP require? Is it less strict or more strict?
They don't get into the max coverage. They don't, no, they don't. They don't get into the coverage. So that's just a bylaw for, you know, Hanson. Now, I didn't see any drainage calculations, not saying that there weren't any. What was submitted to us was the site plans and the notice.
Can I ask
Um,
a question real quick?
Yep.
Who is in charge, who's the authority having jurisdiction over the zone 2?
Well, you have conservation, and I think Board of Health may have something there. But there's also, I think, across the street, some wetlands.
Right.
So that could be, that this work could fall within 100 feet of that wetland. So that's another point that I want to make, you know, so
Because
this,
they don't have any of that on this.
and they're not showing anything here. Now, not to say that it hasn't been investigated, but I know from some of the plans that I've seen, and there might be a wetland that's, I know there's a wetland over there.
Yeah.
And I just don't, not exactly sure how far away it is.
Right.
But it could be, some of this work could be within 100 feet. So I think they may have to consider their total max coverage and reduce the size of the project. So again, I haven't completed my review of this, but I have comments and concerns that I'll pass along to the ZBA.
Can I have a comment and concern?
Yeah.
I don't know
Mr. and Mr. Kevin.
I don't know the answer to this, but aren't they supposed to have some separation from the existing septic system in the new building? I mean, isn't there?
Well,
supposed to be-
it's 10 feet because it's a slab, so they do have that. They have 12. So they have 12.7 from the existing to the new building.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
The one thing they do have is based on the parking, what do I have here for parking? Yeah, that they would need more like 14 parking spaces and they're providing 10, so.
And that's because of the amount of people that may be in the office, it's designated as the office.
Yeah, they're looking at, so if they do have parking calculations here, so, let's see. 5 spaces, 1 per 2,000 net, but it's actually should be gross, which I'm gonna make them aware of.
And then you got 10 9-foot by 20-foot spaces provided?
Yeah, so then you have 5 spaces, so they, 1 space, so they, total required spaces, 8 plus 6 is 14, 10 spaces provided. So,
9-foot by 20-foot?
yeah.
What are they looking to park there?
Pickup trucks.
Well, that's our regulations. We did a 9-foot by 20-foot. You can do a 9 by 18. I mean, that's, but the like the zoning board can actually has the ability to reduce some of that stuff.
Mr. Also a question.
Yeah, doesn't DEP have the authority over wells, well waters and locations and?
Well, one of the things that we have in our own zoning bylaw is that it's supposed to indicate the distance between the proposed activity and the down gradient town well. So that's something they need to add to the plan because there is a well
Right.
down in that area. So there's, again, there's, you know, sign information. There's some stuff here that, you know, my final recommendation obviously is because I'm doing this as town planner, hey, this is what our comments, any comments the board may have, and recommend that, you know, this plan be sent out for peer review to check its compliance with the zoning bylaws and any drainage calculations that might be.
One of the questions I wanted to ask was, the Plymouth County mosquito control, I think it was under, that they used to go out and clean these brooks and not so much the rivers, the brooks, because they've overgrown, and do they still have that?
My understanding is they do.
How do you get them to do it? You go on a list, I'm sure.
My understanding is that you contact them, and so they do go out and have their own program, but you can contact them to come and do certain specific areas that I think maybe that's under their control, but it's kind of like getting in touch with the utility company, I think.
I think they also only do that if, like West Nile virus has been identified in mosquitoes in the area. So it's kind of based on the health perspective of it, I think.
I know that Board of Health does, yeah, they're involved with the mosquito control folks.
The reason I ask, it's down on 57, where the Indian Head empties out underneath Route 58.
Mhm.
It goes out through the bogs and comes into Wampatuck here, pond out here, and continues to go down to the North River. And it's overgrown. So with these storms that are coming up, and also the road will get flooded at that one point because you can't get rid of the flow. And they have boards that regulate the flow on the Cranberry side, whereas when the previous owner, I remember Dick Harris, the highway superintendent, the road was flooded, so we went to ask them to pull some of the boards so it would start flowing into the Wampatuck and then down the river. And he said, yeah, he would, but he never did. But if you look at it, when you go by, it's well overgrown, you know, into it, so it's not flowing correctly.
That sounds like a discussion for the Stormwater Management Committee.
Tony, two questions. One is that parking, it says it's this in gravel. Is that all going to be gravel? Proposed 24 by 24 gravel construction entrance. So are they talking about doing the whole thing is gravel?
Well, they have existing gravel right through about here,
Yeah.
and the construction is, this, I believe you said it was gonna be paved, this is pavement. And this is for,
During construction.
during construction, yes, thank you.
Okay, okay. And then do they talk about the materials that they're looking to use for that discharge? From the recharge out to the discharge going into the,
Yeah, so on this third page, they have details of the system that they're gonna be using. So it's stone, pipe,
what kind of pipe are they using?
12-inch perforated, high-density polyethylene. So this one's the roof, and this one's for the infiltration system.
Do they show the outflow to be caged?
I'm sorry, sir?
Do they show the outflow to be caged, barred?
Let's see. So this would be your typical catch basin. So you'll have a hood here, so it stops your oil and grease from heading out. And then you have this structure here, which is the equivalent of what's known as a storm scepter. It's cascade separated. So what happens is water comes in, it drops down. Some of these, the way it works is as the water drops down, it starts to create almost like a whirlpool effect.
Yeah.
And so everything, such as the solids and the gas and the oil, sort of separate. And then it'll come up through the outlet up to a certain elevation and start to flow out. So when it flows out, that water is, let's say, treated before it gets out into the, in this case, the ditch that's here.
Yeah, now the end of that outflow where that storm discharge apron is,
Mhm.
what's the outflow, what's the end of that outflow pipe? What are they saying is going to be on the end of that? What's the size?
It's probably, that's the outflow pipe. I'm gonna say by the looks of it, it's probably a 12-inch that's gonna be out. And then they'll have the apron.
I think the apron's right in the middle. Erosion control detail.
It's erosion control detail. Right, oh, here we go. Well, that's the temporary. No, they don't have it. It's probably gonna be riprap.
Can I ask another question?
Just have,
The septic system up there is in the driveway, right? So the construction details of that particular item would be important.
Right, that would be
Yeah.
in the Board of Health
That
purview.
just goes right there, because I mean, it's in the driveway, and, you know, they sink, it's just a fact of life.
Well,
They leak too.
Well, they do have H20 capable structures. If you use plastic, you have to wrap it in stone, 6 inches on top, 6 inches on the bottom, makes it H20 capable. Plus, they have an H20 plastic chamber. If it's concrete, it's H20 capable. Same thing with the tanks. So they do have the ability. You know, I look at this plan and I know this engineer and he's pretty well detailed. So looking at the plan, my gut almost tells me that this is sort of a, it's not 100% complete, and then maybe they're going to the ZBA and see what kind of feedback they're gonna get, and then maybe make some changes to finalize. Because, you know, like I said, he's pretty much on top of doing a pretty detailed plan. So I think it's maybe just, I'm not gonna say an informal thing. Go in and see and get feedback, and then say, okay, we'll finalize the plan based on the feedback.
That's the thing I don't like, there's 2 parking spots I don't like. There's one close to the existing building, right? I don't know how far away a parking spot's supposed to be, so now you got a vehicle with gasoline in it, you know, close to the building. I know the fire department would not be real thrilled about that. And then the other one, which is the proposed building B, there's a parking spot there as well, is that right? Yeah, right next to the building. So I would suggest that they reach out to the fire department and make sure that they're okay with those parking spots and whether those are an issue or not.
Do you need any endorsement from us for your letter moving forward?
No, I mean, if you have any additional comments, if not, like I said, I'm gonna have a bunch of comments that I'm gonna pass forward to the ZBA from what I see, from an engineering standpoint.
Mr. Gill?
Are you planning to go to the zoning board of appeals meeting that you? or
For this one?
Just your note, like,
Well, I usually submit the letter, and it's,
Okay.
if they ask me to attend, I will, you know? I don't like to sort of, I don't
I'm
wanna,
lucky enough to be.
I don't wanna say, I don't wanna, I guess, intrude. I don't wanna seem like I'm intruding onto their space, you know what I mean? Or stepping on toes.
No, just, it'd be good to have your knowledge there, I think. And I would prefer in person, but if notes suffice to the rest of the committee, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns in regards to the ZBA special permit request? So now we're going to move on. Next item of business is town planner update. Town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, the first item I have is to talk about the shared streets and spaces program. And so there is a grant application, a grant round that's opening up for fiscal year 2025. The deadline is January 13th. And what the Shared Streets and Spaces program is basically, it's sort of this, pretty much looking for projects that they can make improvements on like right now. Not necessarily design and not projects that are going to be huge, but sort of improvements. So, for instance, I was looking at, let's say, the Winter and Liberty Street intersection. Improvements for pedestrians. Like we had looked at complete streets. Well, we didn't get that. But if we look at Winter Street, for instance, to cross Liberty Street right in front of Town Hall, the crosswalk is there, but you can't really see it. There's no buttons to push to stop traffic. So if you were trying to cross at that point, you're good luck.
You gotta walk down.
You have to walk either all the way down, beyond the lower parking, or you have to walk all the way up almost to Dunkin' Donuts. So I was looking at the Liberty Street corridor from like the middle school all the way through, because that's like one of the big things if it's near school, and looking at what improvements could be made along that corridor for pedestrians and bikes, you know. The other one is maybe along School Street, because the senior center is also something that they like to see. But I didn't know if there was any, you know, if you looked at if there was any potential projects or areas in town that you might think of that comes to mind that says, you know, like I'm not including Main Street because we're already looking at something like that. You know, we're already looking at Main Street. So I'm thinking there's other places, and I thought that Liberty Street might be a good spot to just kind of make improvements. And they do things like improve the ADA ramps by putting like detectable patches down and stuff like that, bike stuff. You know, so it's not a complete streets thing. It's just like, you know, making improvements to what you have now, you know. So, I mean, I have information that I shared, that I can send it to you, you can take a look at it if you want and read through it. And if anyone has any, like, hey, you know, reading this, you know, Winter Street might be a good spot between here and here or whatever, you know, let me know. Like, I reached out to our highway superintendent and said, hey, what do you think? And he was thinking, well, maybe from like the high school along Franklin Street and, you know, to tie in there. But the thing is, this is not for that type of project.
Sidewalks.
Yeah, because that one's more like a, you know, get a grant to build a sidewalk, you know? But maybe there's some areas around that entrance that might be able to be improved. So I was just looking for feedback from the board on anything that you know, I'm open to any ideas, you know. I've tried driving around and figuring out.
McQuon and 58,
McQuon and 58?
it's a horrible intersection. Whoever designed it, I'm not gonna say anymore, but it's really bad design.
The one up near the highway department.
Where what do you call it, the funeral home?
Yeah,
on the
yeah, I was
intersection.
looking at that too, because I think that could use some serious improvements, like,
Yeah,
you know.
'cause when you're coming, and this is just my quick complaint, when you come in from the south, right,
Mhm.
heading north, right, there's a stop sign there.
Yeah.
And when you stop, right, 7, 8 cars just keep taking a left and taking a left, and the, you know, the law pretty much says that, you know, you stop, right, and then the person on the left stops and they keep going. So the people break the law all day long. And if you try to go after you stop, right, they start yelling at you, swearing at you. And I was like, I'm just following the law, for Christ's sake, you know?
And trying to cross through that area is
Yeah,
pretty
it's
bad
bad
too,
too.
because so that was part of my thought process was basically from the middle school all the way to that intersection
Mhm.
for improvements, because once you get beyond that and you get to the Indian Head, then there is a crosswalk with signage and
Flashing lights.
and flashing lights.
Isn't that in the TIF program?
Well,
Isn't that?
I have to go through the plan for the tip to see if there's improvements in that intersection, you know? I'm
They proposed the rotary, which everyone argued was a bad idea.
Bad idea.
And, which I have to be honest with you, I think it's a fantastic idea. But that being said, most people felt like it was important that people who come from north to south to take a left need momentum, especially when it snows out. So, you know, that was the end conclusion that I got out of that.
Well, did they want to do a rotary or did they want to do a roundabout?
A roundabout.
'Cause
You're right.
believe it or not, believe it or not, there is a difference between the two. So, yeah, they did one in Canton.
There's one in Duxbury in 14, and,
Actually had-
you know, it works amazing compared to what it used to be like.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'll send this to everyone, and if you think of things, just, you know, please bounce them back to me. Next item is we have some invoices
Check the
to,
sidewalks, we could
Oh, I'm
use
sorry.
one coming from Main Street, not Main Street, 58 High Street to the park.
yep, that's on my list.
Thank you.
That's on my list.
I do have one more. The new buildings on Main Street, right, were approved by the ZBA, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
The thing that I dislike about those most is that the parking, not parking, the sidewalk ends at the roadway, right? And I think they should be building the sidewalk to the edge of their property line. And I think we've actually asked people to do those.
Yeah, we've done that before.
And so it just confuses me that we would build a sidewalk to nowhere, literally.
Mhm.
So, and that's their property and that frontage. I think they should be made to put a sidewalk in, because if we did that to everybody who proposed a project along Main Street, would be a long way toward having sidewalks. Just saying.
Okay. So the other thing I have is,
Invoices.
oh, I guess, you know, if I could just pause 1 second. So as far as the zoning application, there's no comments from the board. So do you want to make any motion in
To the ZBA.
ZBA?
John had a question about having vet parking spaces at the fire department. Yeah,
Do you want-
need action from us in regards to?
Do you want to take any action there that, you know, like you usually do?
We don't have your proposed letter yet, so I'm not
Okay.
really sure.
All right.
Does that letter have to happen before our next meeting?
Let's see. December 10th, and our next meeting is December 9th.
Okay.
I can always get you, yeah, we can always,
Do a draft letter.
yeah. So we have some invoices. So we have one from Verdantis for $1,000 and $1,002.50, and that is for the starter home grant. We have a second from Verdantis for $2,106.25 for pedestrian improvements grant. We have one for $10,000 to the Old Colony Planning Council, which was for the master plan. And what happened here is that invoice had been sent to us after July 1st, which was fine, but I had passed it along to the town administrator's office and the select board's office because the grant that we had was already zero. So there was $10,000 that had been appropriated through town meeting to pay. What I didn't realize is that accounting had actually put that $10,000 under our umbrella. So that, I spoke with the town accountant, we get everything straightened out, so that's to cover that bill.
These rates, Tony, are these prevailing wage rates?
For,
This is for the 1,002, 1,002.50 cents.
It's under the
So this
threshold.
is the grant, smart growth grant?
okay,
Is that right? Is this prevailing wage?
I'd have to look into it, to be honest with you.
As if it's prevailing wage, they don't have the prevailing wage
So,
sheets.
I don't think they need to do prevailing wage.
I think it's for
a dollar
procurement.
amount. I think it has to be over a certain amount.
I'm doing the wrong job. Did you see that rate?
We have a,
Oh, I'm upping my rates.
we have a invoice for $298.67 from Karen Sunaborg, who is preparing the housing production plan. And then the last one was for $98.95, which is for office supplies for the planning board office.
Any questions, comments, or concerns in regards to the invoices? Yeah, the only one I would have is if they needed to do the prevailing wage, but you're right, it was given off of a project.
So the next item is we have
Stormwater management.
we have, as the board is aware, in the bylaw, stormwater section. And it refers to an application, and it refers to a fee, and we have no application, and we have no fee. So I did a little research into other communities to see what they might have had. Didn't find a lot. So what I did is I put together a draft for an application for that section. I did find, I think, 2 towns that had something that was similar. So I also used information right out of Article 3-21, which is, the stormwater bylaw. So, basic stuff, applicant information, contact information for who's responsible. That's supposed to be available 24 hours a day. And this is basically some information that's right out of the bylaw, that they're supposed to provide. So I put it on the application. Engineer's information, project information, zoning classification, what's the type of construction, provide a narrative description of the construction activity, provide narrative description of the proposed use of any improvements to be constructed, provide a construction timetable, description of proposed erosion and sediment control during construction, description of plans in perpetuity, inspect and maintain the stormwater management system. So I wound up using a lot of info out of the bylaw and then created a site plan checklist, which again is out of the bylaw. So, it's a draft. If there was any comments or additions, something you think that should be added.
I do have 2 questions. And the first one is, Joe Gamache used to talk about a particular type of MS4 permit that was required for construction sites. I don't remember exactly what that was, but it sounded good. It sounded like something we should probably do.
It's
just don't
the,
remember the exact detail.
it's the national, it's the, well, for short, in the industry, we call the EPA, it's the EPA permit.
Mhm.
It's National Pollution, it's NPDES.
But doesn't a person have to be certified somehow? Like, it has to be someone who's taken a class? I know Joe had a lot to say about that, and it all sounded good,
Well,
you know?
the permit from the EPA, anything that's over an acre, you have to file with them. And there is, you have to do your stormwater pollution prevention plan, there has to be someone that's available 24 hours a day. Certain projects, for instance, like up the street next to the McDonald's, the Ritter project,
Mhm.
you know, he has someone that goes out there every week
Fills out a report.
and fills out a report,
And who
yes.
does he submit that to?
He submits that, he would be submitting that to the Conservation Commission and the zoning board. For instance, Meadowbrook subdivision, I get a report almost every 2 weeks from Mr. Ellis, not Don Ellis, not Don Ellis, with his report, because he's been certified in that, so he'll give us the report. Yeah,
Oh,
so,
but that- it doesn't really lay out on that, like, who do I, like, and that was my next question, is to whom is this submitted to? Because there's three possibilities, there's the planning board, the Board of Health, and who was the other one, I don't know, but I know there's three.
Conservation.
Conservation, yes. So, it's not really clear on that, so if I was somebody coming into town and looking at it, it's like, all right, well, I gotta fill this thing out, you know, now to whom do I give it to?
well, this article, if my memory serves me correct, the approving authority or the oversight committee is planning board,
Okay.
and it's for anything over an acre of disturbance,
That's right, I'm in over
so.
Okay. But, you know, I'm just saying, like, the application to me, you know, if I was a developer coming from the outside, I'd be like, who the hell do I give this thing to? You know, which is a valid question.
Right, so, I mean, if they look at that section, if they look at Article 3-21, it'll
Yeah.
point out the planning board, but that, you know, you have a point there, I could add some language to say submit to the planning board, you know?
Yeah, like, but there's if, ands, or buts, you
Yeah.
know, because it wouldn't always go to the planning board, it could go to the Board of Health or the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, but Article 3-21 specifically calls out the planning board.
Yeah. Because it just seems like it could get passed around to, you know, and, you know, there's nobody really gatekeeping it. So what you're
3-12
saying
is the
planning
select board.
Right?
Yeah. 312 is the select board, 321 is us.
Yeah.
Do you need to develop a fee?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, there's supposed to be a fee. Now, I can do some research on some fee structures, let's say with other communities, to see what they're getting for fees, you know. We don't get a ton of big projects that disturb over an acre. I can tell you there's another community that what they do is they've actually broken it down to less than an acre. And they'll give you if you disturb between like 0 and 5,000 square feet, they'll give you, well, it's kind of like a general permit, like, yep, no worries, but there's a fee. If it's if it's anything over, it's between 5,000 and 15,000 square feet, it's this kind of permit, it's this kind of fee, it goes before the Conservation Commission for review, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you get the bigger stuff, you know, so,
There should be a fee scale.
I'm sorry?
There should be a fee scale.
Yeah, and the article calls for a fee, but there was never one developed that I know of. So,
Couldn't it be a sliding scale fee, like,
Yeah.
you know, under 5,000 square feet, this is what it costs?
well, the thing is,
5,000, it costs more, because obviously the bigger it gets, the more oversight.
well, that's just it. 3-21 specifically calls out for anything over an acre,
So 40,000 square feet or more.
43,560 or greater.
So in order for us to get that, we'd have to change Article 321.
Is that something that people feel should happen? Because if you think about it, I mean, even the topography of Hanson, you know, that would definitely.
I'm not really looking to stand up at the microphone at town meeting and try to explain land use again, but I will.
I think it becomes, it's a double-edged sword, because you go, well, you don't want to fee everybody to death, you know?
Mhm.
But the flip side is, you're a town, you're a business, and you need to make revenue, and one of the ways you make revenue is fees, you know?
Committing resources, you know,
Yeah.
someone's gotta look at that thing,
Right.
someone's gotta file it, and, you know, all those people get paid,
Yeah.
so, you know.
Mr. Ellis?
I thought the state came out and said that the towns can not make profit. They can only charge for what the cost of the item is.
Yeah, that's always been true.
Right. But we can't overcharge.
No. That's ambiguous though, isn't it?
But permitting
I worked on it too.
Yeah.
permitting is ambiguous, it's like, you know, depending on what town you go, like, I pull electrical permits in like 100 different towns, and every single one of them is different.
Different fees.
You know, so, let's get some uniformity maybe, I don't know.
So
I
John
mean-
makes a-
Yeah.
But I mean, for this one, at this point, it's over an acre. You know, what do you want to charge? You want to say, okay, for, you know, and I get, like I said, I want to bring this up to you, you can take a look at it, hit me with some thoughts, and then and maybe look at some other towns where you say, okay, so an acre's gonna be, let's say $1,000. Anything between
What's gonna go
1
on?
acre, 1 acre and 10 acres, 2,000, or 500, whatever you want to.
What's going on that 1 acre or 2 acres?
Well, we say that any, you know, any proposed disturbance of greater than 1 acre. No, it's even for residential.
For a residential house,
Yeah.
so if somebody has a wetlands up the back for an acre, and it's got an acre of buildable land, you're gonna charge them for the wetland too.
Well,
It can't be built on.
when it's, if you look at the stormwater management, anything over, if it's a single-family residence, you know, usually, but I've seen other communities do it. I'm not saying that to do it, I'm just saying this, I've seen other communities do it. You know, where when I'm on the other side of the table, when I've been on the other side, I'm like, Jesus, you know, you're gonna fee a guy because he's disturbing, you know, 10,000 square feet of land, but, you know,
Well, I bought some land, I don't know, 5 years ago, and I subdivided it, it was all on the road, and there was 4 lots, I think, out of it. And they said that I had to do stormwater management on it. What do you do for stormwater management? Because it's just one here, one here, one here, one there. Over that, you have to, stormwater comes in. But that's in a subdivision when they talk about it, but they don't say that. They don't know the difference between a subdivision and a Form A on a street when they come up with the laws, and it caused a lot of problems.
yeah, well, this, I mean, for instance, when Meadowbrook came in, did they do this? Did they come to you as the planning board and say, we're disturbing over an acre of land?
Right.
Did they give you an application? Did they give you a fee?
No.
No. So you lost out there.
Did
Because
you also do it by structure though? How many
Which-
structures are being built?
Where was this?
it's Meadowbrook subdivision on County Road. I know they had, you know, they had to file with the EPA, because you have to. Anything
Right.
over an acre, you file with the EPA.
Right.
But your town, under your own local bylaw, calls for an application and a fee,
Yeah.
which was supposed to be like set by the planning
For the
board
subdivision.
for the subdivision, because they disturbed more than an acre,
Yeah.
right?
There's nothing built there at the time.
Right, but they're gonna disturb more than an acre when they're done. So,
That's when you charge them.
So
well, but I'm
we
saying,
need to come up with one.
Yeah, we need to come up with a scale.
You charge them what goes in there when they take out a permit for the septic system and the building and so on, whatever.
well, I'm talking about just the project itself. So when they submitted the subdivision plan,
Right,
as part of that submission package, they should have also submitted under your 3-21 an application and a fee, but you don't have an application or a fee.
Now,
So all I'm saying is that project, when they submitted the subdivision plan, then they know that they were gonna disturb 5 acres of that land.
right.
You didn't get anything out of it, which you probably could have. So I'm just saying, you have to look at,
Even if
What
it's
is
a
it-
normal-
what is it that you want to get out of that? What do they do to justify the payment? That's all I'm asking. I mean,
Well-
if they don't do anything on there, how does that become a factor?
Well,
Well-
when the planning board receives this, right, it's gonna have to review it, right, set the fee and review it, and then pass it on to whatever department may be responsible, planning.
well, planning's responsible for it.
Right, but if it's in conservation jurisdiction, you'd be turning it over to them.
Well,
right?
conservation,
You have to file and take a permit.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
But I'm saying is, you as a town came up with 3-21, and you said, if you disturb more than an acre of land, on a local level, you have to give us an application and a fee.
Can you
So
give
could
us,
it be the
can you, for the
select-
next meeting, can you get us a couple comparatives that we can look at that
So,
that you would think is, well, I think this town's maybe overdoing it, but this town's underdoing it, and
Yeah.
we'll come up with something in the median.
yeah, because I mean, you're the ones that are saying,
Yeah.
so if you submit that, so for instance, we'll use Meadowbrook as just an example. They submitted a subdivision plan.
Yep.
That subdivision plan clearly shows that they were gonna disturb more than an acre of land. Under 3-21, they should have filed an application and given you a fee. That's your bylaw that says that, you know? So if, let's say your bylaw said, okay, fill out the application and the fee's $1,000, well, then they would have paid you $1,000
Right.
as part of the application, because it would all be part of it, you know? Conservation side, and even the subdivision control law, you're gonna file with the EPA as well.
That's a different purpose.
That's a different animal. Matter of fact, for Meadowbrook, when they came back for their modifications, I had said to them, have you filed with the EPA yet? Well, we haven't yet because we're waiting until we know exactly who's gonna oversee it. Okay. Well, that's not, when I worked in other towns, that's not how it flies. It's you, when you come before the planning board, you show them that you've done your permit, you know?
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
So the money that comes from this, right, could be put into the drainage committee fund,
Could be.
right? So I don't know the legalities of that, but if this were attached to that, right, because on the back it says site plan checklist, right? So somebody's got to review the checklist, right? And so that constitutes a fee.
It'd be added
Right,
to
and
it.
and you also have the possibility that if there's a dispute about what should be done and what's on the checklist, right, you'd have to get it peer reviewed. And that doesn't mention that in here, that of the peer review process for something like this. Like, this may require, like, let's say the drainage committee takes this over and starts collecting the fees, and they have to do site plan review, right, they'd have to get paid for it, right? Or the ability to charge them
It'd
for
be an
it,
enterprise fund,
right?
Well, yeah, you'd have to change, it'd probably go into the general fund, and you'd have to change 3-21, because you're the approving authority under 3-21.
Right, but, you know, I guess I'm saying, you know, he's saying earlier that, you know, there's no funds in that account, and this seems to me like, because it is stormwater management, why couldn't we look into the legalities of charging that fee and adding it into, maybe not an enterprise fund, but, you know, a conservation fund, it's separate, right? So it's for their use, as long as it's used for the intended purposes, which would be this, like, you know, drainage, ditches need repair, you know, and it's just another way of funding that process, because we're all talking about how there's no money for this. There you go. Every time someone does a development, you get something from them, you know?
And next meeting, we can
Yeah, but you have somebody inspecting it now, all the subdivision, to make sure it's done correctly. I mean, this is one of the problems, that affordability on these homes and stuff, they push them up with it, all the expenses, and the poor guy buying the house has to pay
Yeah,
for it.
but those expenses are valid, right? I get your point, but at the same token, the town itself, right, my taxes are being used to make sure that these people are doing the right thing. Why wouldn't we just charge them for it?
Well,
And some of
Just
these are
saying,
gonna
you know.
be
but you
developments
get the
too.
fee for the building, you get the fee for the electrician, the plumber, all the way down the line, you got conservation, you got planning board.
It's the cost of doing business.
Yeah, well, then you do that, but now if you start tacking on more,
Well, I mean, without getting too far into, I mean, what brought on Article 3-21?
That's a good question.
What made you put that into your own bylaw? I mean, the state regulations already, you know, there was already regulations in place.
I think I can answer
Yeah.
that. This is exactly what I was just talking about, because I remember the discussions that involved around it, that, you know, the idea was that, you know, because you have all these unfinished business with all these drainage ditches.
But then the conversation stopped.
Yeah, of course. You know.
Because I read it, and like I said, it says, you know, application and fee, and I'm like, where's the
I
application?
think the
What's the
conversation,
fee?
I think the conversation may have stopped because the town planner left.
Because when you go, okay, so where's the, so now if I come into town and I read your regulations, and I say, okay, general bylaw, and I'm
Yeah, I
like,
gotta
okay,
check. Who do I pick it up?
where's the application,
And
where's
how
the
much?
fee?
Yeah.
You know? So the planning board, if they go, what's the fee? It's up to you guys. Well, what do I charge them? $10,000, $1 million, $1? You know what I mean? So the next one,
Okay.
the next one I did, if you don't mind, we'll move on from that one, but, you know, I'm open to feedback, and I'll do a little more research, but I just want to bring that to you. is, the chair, I think, had talked about, the earth removal, looking at earth removal. and-
3-12.
Yeah, so, came up with a draft, again, earth removal application. This would be handled through the select board.
That's right.
I reviewed other towns, so I sort of used what I saw what some other towns were using. I thought that was good. Excuse me, that was good. And, it's a 7-page application.
Yeah.
And again, take a look at it. If there's things you see that, hey, that could be added, or think that should be,
I liked it.
Yeah.
So are we gonna charge you a fee as well?
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
I'm totally okay with it, and, yeah. It's gonna be reviewed.
Depends on the fee.
Spoken by a true developer. So, my question is, on this, the earth removal permit, right? I've seen this before, and if you go in the Wayback Machine, there was a significant amount of material moved from the old Ritter Cranberry Bog.
That's right.
And people were confused by that, upset by it, and wanted some oversight.
Right.
Right? So I think the issue that it came about was like, nobody seemed to be clear as to what the regulations were and who was in charge of doing it. And I had to be honest with you, most of the selectmen at the time that I knew were like, what the hell do I know about earth removal? Why isn't this a land use issue?
Yeah.
So, to have a group of selectmen whose goal and purpose is political, or I should say, a wider view of things, to give them an earth removal permit seems confusing to me. And it was at the time, everybody was there. If you look back at that meeting, people were like, what do I know about it? I think it's in the wrong office, I guess, is what I'm trying to point out.
well, I think probably what the best thing that the select board could do is say, okay, we get these, it's our job to approve these, but we're not gonna approve it until we get feedback from the land use boards.
So
Yeah.
shouldn't it say that, like, in here, that's like, office of the select board recommended by conservation, because it may vary, right? Again, because if the earth was being removed from a conservation restricted site, then it would be under their review, right? So it just seems confusing to me to have this as an application for the Board of Selectmen. And I'm sure there's members on there that have.
Yeah, unfortunately, the thing is, 3-12 comes under their purview.
Yeah, we'd have to
Right.
change 3-12.
Yeah,
What about the Farms Act, too? You gotta watch out for that.
yeah, I think they come under something a little bit different,
So would it be better, in addition to this, to also add language to 3-12 that says approval of the the select board with review, or after review of applicable land use boards? Would that be?
Sure, I mean, this one is more like, hey, I'm showing you.
Yeah, we're giving them a
But this,
tool.
but this is really more like going to the select board and saying, hey,
Yeah.
if someone comes to you with a earth removal permit, here's
this as a
here's an
tool.
application, you
Yeah.
can use that and answers a lot of questions, gives you a lot of information.
Right.
That you could then make a decision on, and then you could ask as a select board, great, here's all this information, we can absorb it and maybe get an understanding,
Yeah.
but then get feedback from the land use boards as to what their thoughts are. Yeah.
I mean, but that's not codified in there. They can just turn around, we're gonna go, who cares, just sign it,
That they could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that's gonna happen, I'm just.
But the danger is right now is that nobody's enforcing that 3-12.
Right.
But
And,
what is the select board? Are you saying somebody's gonna fill this out and hand it to Laura?
well, no,
Someone,
it's a-
if someone can, if,
Select board?
the earth removal permits, especially for like your town, was the fact that you had a big cranberry industry. And a lot of times cranberry bogs start out as giant
Yep.
hills of sand or gravel. So the first thing they do is, to cover the cost of the cranberry bog, is you take down that, you make all the money out of that hill
Sell it.
and sell it. So
Yeah.
that's where the earth removal permits tend to come in, because they're gonna be hauling off a
Right.
boatload of material.
Yeah,
But that should be
bringing material in as
handled by
well.
the select board, you're saying?
It-
I mean, I see the, I
Yeah.
know, I'm just wondering, I don't know what board, it seems.
So,
Yeah, the
if you
select
go
board-
back to that meeting, everything you're talking about was already discussed because, at the time, they were removing material, right? So as Don said, every farm or cranberry bog has a farm plan, right? but it's a secret plan. You're not allowed to look at it because it's, well, it is. It's a competitive thing
Not supposed to be.
from one cranberry bog. Yeah, well, that's what they tell you, right?
Yeah,
And that's what they were saying at the time. They said, oh, I'm sorry, it's a secret. We can't tell you what we do. You know, there's conservation issues involved in there. There's streams and rivers and so forth.
It was a nightmare.
So, yeah, so for them to be taking all that material out of there, they weren't going to anyone. They said, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's a secret. It's part of our farm plan. And so when you say, can you see your farm plan, they don't have to give it to you. And that's actually by statute from the state, right? They can withhold that because it's a competitive thing, like they don't want anyone to know how they're removing their soil, So I don't know. This brings up a lot, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's also information that comes right out of 3-12. For instance, it talks about like the bond requirement, the penalties, the review fee. It says per Massachusetts, general law, chapter 44, section 53G, the select board shall impose a project review fee on a new application. Those applications which require review by outside consultants due to size.
In my research, I
Yeah.
couldn't find any minutes
So you
going back.
got the guy sitting at the desk there, what the hell does this mean?
I went back in the archive, the minutes I got back to 98, I think. And I never found one application of the bond. So it was that, I actually didn't find any applications of somebody coming and ask for a removal permit until, I think it was 2012.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that you're gonna get big projects that are gonna have this kind of earth removal, but you do need something if they do have one. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a bunch of farms in town,
Yeah.
and we're also looking at revitalizing the farm, what is it? The Right to Farm Act.
Right to
Right.
Farm Act.
So then you get that, right? They might decide,
So next meeting, you just do like what we did last, let's see what's comparable for fees,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then we can discuss it then.
you don't need to reprint it, we already have it.
Yeah.
The two forms you've just shown us look like they were written by two totally different companies. This one versus the prior one, is that meant to be a totally different form, totally different?
absolutely, you don't want to get confused.
Yes, I believe those are the two, yeah. I mean, ones that get all kinds of right here, right here, right here, right here, and this one's just kind of free form, you get a little square to write in.
Yeah,
I
the,
don't think we have a standard, but maybe that's something different.
Tony's got them all, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
TA issue.
And then on the first one, you mentioned the responsible person who's available 24 hours a day.
yeah, that's part of,
Is that
that's
really part of the,
part of stormwater management, yes.
you want somebody who's available, like,
Conservation should be doing that on a site
I'm
that's
not,
in their
midnight, I'm gonna be calling somebody and say, hey.
Well,
the
highways
appointment's midnight.
available 24/7.
Yeah, the whole idea is,
If it starts
for
going
instance,
out onto the
well,
road,
for instance,
sounds odd.
well, for instance, if a gasoline truck has an accident on Route 24,
Oh, is that what it's?
and the gasoline now is flowing into the catch basins, is now flowing into the wetlands, you need someone that's gonna show up there to boom that, and start
We
dealing with
could do
it.
a real-world event. A Brockton water main broke on Route 27.
So this is 24/7 once the project's done, not during the project?
No, during the project. The whole idea is they're responsible for being
You're talking
available.
about both during and after? Or you're
Right.
just
During.
Are you volunteering?
No, that's what I'm saying. The
No,
24 hours a day.
Yeah, but that's talking about the person who's who got the site plan, right? So you have this site, right?
Yeah.
And let's say in the middle of the night, right, you have a big storm and mud and dirt starts flowing out onto the street. Well, you need someone to be able to get to 24 hours a day to say, make it stop.
I get that during the
Yeah.
project, if that's just during the
Yeah.
project, but if it's 2 years down the road. and that
Not,
happens-
no, it's during the project.
That's my cell phone. Tony doesn't give out his cell phone.
Yeah, okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Cool. All right. OCPC Summit reminder? Is that coming up?
Yeah, that's coming up,
The fourth,
the 4th. So I don't know if anyone, was interested in going, because I have to RSVP. And Mr. Ellis, I think, was interested in going.
All right. Give us a report when you get back. Sure. How are the babies? She's going back. The OCPC might suck you up. Yeah.
Is that a +1 invitation?
It just says, yeah. I'm gonna pass, there's a revised adequate access, we'll move that down, because it's, it's getting late here. So, the Mass bond bill, let me just call it up real quick here.
Is this what me, Tellerman sent you?
Yes. So I sent it to everyone for you to read.
There's a lot in here. I have millions of questions.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure I'm the one that can answer all of them, but to paraphrase what's going on is basically, so this bond bill has 1, 2, 3, 4, an additional 11, basically there's 11 grants that we will not be able to access due to lack of compliance with Section 3A of the,
So where's the
Zoning
garbage
Act.
barrel for this?
This is an additional 11
yeah,
that she just cut and pasted?
Yep.
yeah. So that, and so this, within these 11, it's now listing the library one, which, you know,
Oh, yeah, no, she didn't cut, they were strategic.
Oh, no, it was definitely strategic.
Oh, it was specific on what they wanted to target.
But
So-
it's just 11 today, it was it's 3, then it was
It's-
13,
Right.
now it's 24, and
It'll be a million by next week.
yeah, to give you an example, real quick,
It'll be a
there
recall
is,
election.
there's the Mass Trails Grant
Mhm.
program for getting funding for maintenance and or creating trails.
Just the work Conservation Committee does, yeah,
Correct.
Conservation Commission.
I was on a webinar this week, well, I'm sorry, last week, on that. And one of the questions was, matter of fact, it happened to be Matt Dyer. Does the community have to be MBTA compliant? And the person running the program said, contact me on that. So,
You know what that means?
what does that tell you? So anyway, that's the first part of this advisory. The second one, which talks about, it has to do with zoning. And so what it is a special permit and a building permit. So when you start, you have a year to start your work. If within that year you haven't started your work and the zoning changes, you're subject to the new zoning requirements. If you've started it, you're grandfathered. So it was a year for a building permit and a year for a special permit. What they've done is they've changed it now so that it's a year for a building permit, but 3 years for a special permit. So if you get that special permit, you have within that 3 years to start it. If you do start it within that 3 years, you're not subject to any new zoning that might come into play.
So can I ask a quick question?
Mhm.
And I know in conservation, years and years ago, this issue came up. And, you know, the question was, what constitutes the starting of the project? Breaking ground, you know, that's really not clear in there. So,
Well-
you know, like, you could say, well, you know, we went over there and looked at it on Tuesday, and we all agreed that we're gonna dig a hole. So
Well,
that's starting the project.
Well, it just so
Yeah.
happens, this says, the as continuously and expeditiously language applicable to special permits and site plan review in the context of construction involving the redevelopment of previously disturbed land is deemed to have commenced, quote, upon substantial investment in the site preparation or infrastructure construction, end quote.
So.
So still a bit ambiguous, but, you know, maybe not
It
as
is.
much.
It's not saying, after you dig the hole, you own it, right? It's, yeah.
So
Is that a substantial hole? How
Yeah.
substantial is the hole?
So the last one,
Open
which,
to interpretation.
the last one, which talks about a tolling period, I actually reached out to Jay because he put a lot of language in there, and I read through it at least 3 times, and I still wasn't quite fully grasping what he's saying. So I'm not even gonna try and explain it until I get some clarification from him, because
Okay.
it's a bit confusing. And that's all I have for town planner update.
Any questions from the town planner?
Oh, I'm sorry, one other quick point.
Nope.
It's
Nope.
not,
You said no.
it's not on the agenda if you're not comfortable speaking about it. And what it was is a letter from the engineer over at Morse. They have a structure, they want to use a different type of structure that does the exact same thing. So in other words, they're using a different company. So it's Storm Scepter, they want to replace it with a company called HydroWorks. It does the exact same thing. The engineer has sent me a letter, I asked him for a letter from him saying, I want you to certify that what you're changing is going to do the exact same thing, because basically I want you're the one that's going to own it. And he did send me that letter.
So he has
So-
empirical data to support the idea that
Yes.
they're both the same.
Yes.
right? So what's the question, really, if you think about it?
It's a change.
It's just a name change.
It's
like-
just, yeah, it's just a change, but I wanted to bring it before the board. You know, I've looked at it, I used a different company when I was doing drainage design. I've spoke to some other people who have used this product, and they said, yeah, it does, they're like, I've used it, they don't have a problem with it. So I'm just, but I still wanted to just bring it to the board so that you know about it. So I'm okay with it. Yeah, I don't have any issue with it, but I still want to bring it to the board so that I don't want the board to think I'm doing something without checking with you, you know?
The chair would entertain a motion to back the town planner's decision in regards to the change for the Fern Hill project,
Yeah, Meadowbrook, so,
Meadowbrook Fern Hill project.
So moved.
Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Any discussion in regards to that motion?
Yeah, I do have one quick
Mr.
question.
Kimball?
So isn't there a peer review engineer for that project? And wouldn't they be required to review that before that change was made, rather than us allowing that change? Because, it should be peer reviewed, right?
I can pass it along to if that's the will of the board, I can pass it along to the peer reviewer and ask them to give their opinion.
Well, it's not my will, I'm just curious, it's like, because I know that there's that peer review process.
Do you want to
so I think
incorporate
we
that in the
just-
motion?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out, because, if you look at it, it's gonna be an issue down the road if you say, yeah, you can use that particular device. Well, what if the peer review engineer says, hey, wait a second, I've heard about these things, they don't work like they say they do.
Sure.
That's all.
Mr. Ellis, can you retract your second?
How much go?
Not much.
Okay.
Mr. Bonanno, will you entertain a rescission and remotion to include Mr. Kemet's question in regards to receiving correspondence from peer review as well as endorsing the town planner?
So moved.
Motion's been made, seconded. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Great edit. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and that's all I have, other than wish everyone on the board a happy Thanksgiving. Hope it's healthy and wealthy and wise.
All the same back to you.
Wow, it's deep.
We're tentatively scheduled to have our next planning board meeting on December 9th. What's the will of the board?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mr. Venanato to have the planning board meeting on Monday, December 9th, 2024. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Ellis. Any discussion in regards to that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will see everybody on December 9th. For everybody out there in the town of Hanson land, the planning board would like to also say to all the citizens, happy Thanksgiving. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mr. Beninato, seconded by Mr. Kemet. Any discussion in regards to adjournment? It's 7:59, we are adjourned. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's 8 o'clock, we are adjourned.